Hey now, today we're going to take a look at League of Hackers from MOA Ideas Game Design, or as I like to call this, episode 46 in my series of small Asian games that are going to be really hard for you to find. Sorry about that. But this is actually not my first run-in with MOA Ideas Game Design. I reviewed Dungeon Guilds, which was their first game, which was a really neat, cutthroat little card game that didn't really look like it would be that cutthroat. You have chibi characters going down into a dungeon, and you're playing your adventurers down on different dungeon levels in order to get the most treasure and to edge out your opponents. But it was a really cool, addictive little game. Now, League of Hackers has a much different theme than that one. As the name implies, you are a hacker and you're engaged in a competition with all of these other hackers. You're trying to install servers and protect them with firewalls and make attacks, hacking attacks on the other players in order to burn out their servers. So it already feels very thematic. Does it live up to the high expectations I had having played Dungeon Guilds? Let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back and I'll let you know what I think. Alright, this is League of Hackers. The theme of the game is that each player represents a different hacker or hacking team who is trying to compete against all these other players and bomb out their servers. And the goal, essentially, like so many other games, is to have the most points by the end of 3 rounds of play, which you're going to keep track of over here. Each round is going to be made up of 5 actions. So every player is simultaneously, or almost simultaneously, going to be taking one action. And then after everyone's resolved an action 5 times, you'll go to the next round and pretty much reset everything. Now, all these cards that are out here on the table represent servers. These are what you're trying to keep undamaged as much as possible because you're going to get points at the end of the game for doing so. Now, the important notes on these cards, you have the cost of the card up in the corner. It's the same thing on both sides. You have these, they just call them holes, or I call them nodes. I think it's better to call them nodes, personally. And then a lot of the game uses iconography. So right down here, this says, this server gives you 1 victory point if it's undamaged at the end of the round. I know it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but the game, to its credit, does give you these little cheat sheet cards, which have a lot of the different symbols on the back of them that you can keep track of. And the rulebook has some more of the more clarified, to clarify some of the other finer points if you really have the need of it. Each player is also going to get a set of these action chips. Now, these action chips are what you're going to use to actually do the actions during the game. You have chips for mitigation, attack, install, and defense. So these are all your typical hacker actions. I don't know how accurate this is to real life. But those are the actions you get to do during the course of the game. And then you have this little defense board here of 4 different colors with little cubes in your particular color. You're going to move those up whenever you get more defense, and those are going to protect you, your nodes of different colors. You notice that all these nodes are of different colors. However high your defense is, it's going to protect those different colored nodes. So at the start of the game, you're going to have 10 servers laid out, and after you finish explaining the rules, every player is going to take one of these servers. Now, for the first round of play, each of the servers has 2 nodes, but when you get to the second year, you actually have 3 node servers that actually cost $1 more to put out onto the board. Then you're going to have 4 node servers, which cost you $2 as well. Now, the more nodes, the better, because first off, at the end of every round, you get a point just for every node that has no damage on it whatsoever, and these are the little damage tokens that you use to keep track. But you get an escalating amount of points if it's completely undamaged. So for round 3 cards, it's actually 3 victory points at the end of each round. So the more servers that are undamaged, the better, and the more nodes that you have that are undamaged, the better as well. So let's go through what the different actions do. First off, you have install. Install is very simply getting a new server from the ones that are available, and remember those are cleared out at the end of every year, and paying for it and putting it in front of you. Now, and servers will carry over from round to round, obviously. Now, whenever you take any action in this game, you're going to take the appropriate chip. You're going to take the, in the case of a server, all you're doing is buying it. So currency in this game is other cards. So you're going to take whatever card you're using to pay for it, put it underneath your chip. When everyone else shows in their action, you flip over. And if you're doing an install, that shows the wrong chip there. You'll discard the card that you used to pay for it, and you're going to put the server in front of you. It's as simple as that. The next type of action you can do is defense. These are all going to be resolved in this order, by the way, when everyone flips over their chips. So that was the right chip that I had, by the way. That's here, I'll do this. This is the defense chip. So with the defense chip, you're going to be able to play, appropriately enough, one of the defense cards. And I'll show you a few of them that they have in the deck. Now, all of these are going to be color-coded, obviously, because these correspond to the different nodes out on the servers. I'll keep calling them nodes. I like that. So first off, up in the top corner of all of these defense cards, you have these little castle symbols. These represent that as soon as you install these defense cards, you're going to increase your defense in the appropriate spot on your defense board. Those are just really a reminder, so you don't have the defense board, by the way, but it is helpful. Now, some of these actually cost 0, but otherwise some of them will have costs of 1 and 2. I don't think there's any that cost 3, but potentially they could. And then, in addition to giving you that defense, every defense card has a special ability. This one, I know the iconography is a little confusing, but it's if you damage one player with an attack, you get at least one player for any amount of damage, you get a bonus victory point. Then you have cards like this. This one gives you 2 red defense. And then, whenever you do the mitigation action, you get to tap this card. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say tap. You get to rotate this card 90 degrees and remove 2 damage from nodes on one of your servers. This is a Trojan Horse card. This one gives you 2 blue defense, and they have versions of this card for every color, but whenever you make an attack that targets yellow or red, you get to do +2 damage. Let's see, we have, these all have cool names, by the way, I haven't been saying them. This one says Certification Audit. I guess it's not a cool name, but it makes sense thematically. This one just gives you bonus points at the end of the rounds for every unblemished server that you have, so it stacks with the points that you already get for the unblemished servers from the cards themselves. And finally, just the last one I'll show you of the defense cards. This is a universal defense card. It gives you +1 defense in every one of your rankings for every color. So that is the defense action. It's just you putting out useful support cards. I think they probably should have just called it the support action, honestly. Useful support cards to help you out, to get you more points, or just to defend your servers. The next type of action is, of course, attack. If you have defense cards, then there must be attack cards. And attack cards work the same way when you're trying to cast them, just like defense and installation. You'll have to pay for them. You'll put the card, with both the defense and attack, you'll put the card that you actually want to use on top of the cards that you're using to pay for it, then flip them over. But attacks work a little differently in the sense that you can actually get an escalating effect by spending more and more. So we'll just take a look at a few of them here. You have this one here. I guess I'll say the names of them. You have Man in the Middle. This is a green attack card, so it's going to be attacking strictly green. If you pay it, if you see there's question marks up here. So if you pay 0 to cast it, you're just going to deal 1 damage. And by the way, the way that damage... Oh, I'm sorry, it's 3 damage. But the way that this works is that you deal 3 damage to every green node on the board. That's every player that has a green node is going to have to put 3 damage markers into it to a maximum of 4 damage. If I had spent $1 to cast this card, I would get to do 6 damage. If I had spent $2, it would be 9 damage. And the last little icon here just tells you who is dealing damage to, and it's just like a little reminder of what the card does. Here's another green attack card. It looks like this one is exactly the same, the Password Sniffer. I just liked it because his head is the logo of this game company. Here's a yellow one, and this one is different in the sense that it actually has a direct damage. Anytime that you see, it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can focus that just a little bit. Not really, but okay. That is direct damage when you see that little spider symbol. So you have to pay a lot more money for it, $3, but it means that you get to deal 9 direct damage, which bypasses all defenses. Any opponent's defenses mean nothing to that card. Here's a universal attack card in that you get to choose what color you attack when you use the card. I like to say cast the card. So when you cast the card, you get to choose which color it's affecting. And as you can see, this one has direct damage as well. And the last one we'll look at is a blue one. Same as the other ones, but it just targets blue specifically, and it has direct damage too. This one's called Rainbow Table. I guess this is their hacker code names, whatever. So that's 3 of the 4 actions. The last action you get to do, and I briefly mentioned this before, with one of those repair cards, was Mitigation. Mitigation is your way to, if you have extra cards left and you need to get rid of damage, you can use the Mitigation token, put any cards that you want underneath it, and for every card that you spend, you get to remove 3 damage from your damaged servers as a last-ditch effort in order to get points. And that's really how the game is going to progress. Every time that you get points, obviously you move yourself around the track, and whoever has the most points at the end of 3 years of play, taking 5 actions each time, is going to be the winner. Every time you get to a new year, you dump all the cards in hand, you keep any defense cards and server cards that you have, and you continue on. That is League of Hackers. Let's get to my final thoughts. I'll just cut right to the chase here. I was very happy with League of Hackers. I'm still debating whether I like this or Dungeon Guilds more, because they're very different games, and I think that Dungeon Guilds is just a little bit faster, and it can handle more players, and it might be just a tad better because of those things. But League of Hackers has a really awesome theme. There's a surprising amount of game in that small box. It's definitely more in-depth than Dungeon Guilds, and there are some things I like about it that it does better, and there's some things that I don't. There's a couple of wonky things about it, but overall it's still a very good game. So let's go back and take a look at the theme and the components. Like I already said, the theme is really cool, and I think it comes across fairly well through the game. This is a small card game. There's not much you can do with the theme here. It's not like there's big miniatures and story elements and things like that, but the idea of taking these server cards and having to protect the nodes on them, and I prefer to call them nodes, not holes like the rulebook does, but the idea of installing them, protecting them, setting firewalls and these defense cards against it, and also essentially the defense cards are support cards as well. In fact, I pretty much think they should have just been called that, because they give you these special abilities, which, it represents different programs that you're installing, which I think is pretty thematic, and also making hacking attacks against the other players, and you're spending money to do it, because of course a hacker is only as good as their rig, right? Or at least I heard. I know nothing about hacking, but the better rig is going to give you that edge. This is also what Netrunner has taught me. So I think the theme is pretty good here, and I like the components. I like all the artwork, the graphic. Even if you don't like chibis, I think you could probably agree that the graphic design itself is really, really well done. Everything looks really clean and intuitive. It's icon based, which can be kind of frustrating at first. It's going to take you 2 or 3 games to really get under your belt and remember what every icon does, but it's not a huge deal, and I think it helps it be more language independent that way. So I like the components. You have little discs and cubes and things like that, but everything looks pretty cool when you have it all laid out on the table. And like I said, it's surprising that they got that much game into a small box. Now, as far as the gameplay, there's some really interesting things going on here as far as hand management, which is one of my, I really love card games. Any game where that sounds funny to say, but any game where cards are the main mechanic of the game. It's why I like games like Seasons and Imperial Settlers so much, because you're using cards. You're drafting them in Seasons, and then you're playing them, and you're making combos with them, and you're interacting with the other players. In Imperial Settlers, you can use them as locations in your empire. You can raise them. You can make them into deals. And in League of Hackers, you can use them either as currency, or you can use them as the actions that are denoted on them, whether a defense card or a attack card. And you can even pump them up. You pump up the attacks in different ways, and then the defense cards are doing multiple things. They're giving you defense points for your servers, but they're also giving you special abilities which may actually enhance your attacks. So I like that you have all these different versatile things that you can do going on at each time. And I like the programmed action, or the simultaneous programmed action, and everyone flipping over and seeing what the state of the game is there. There's not too much you can do to screw over another player. This isn't like Robo Rally programmed actions or anything like that, where you can just say, oh, okay, I do defense, you do attack. Oh, my attack was completely foiled. No, because you're attacking every player, chances are you're going to be able to do something. It's really hard to totally jack over someone's turn upon simultaneous reveal. As long as you're paying attention to what everyone's server nodes are like, you should be able to make a good kind of attack against everyone. So I like that aspect of it as well. Now, the big debate that I've had with each of the groups that I've played this with is whether or not the attacks are overpowered. If I was going to say there's a fault with the game, it can be that there's a weird curve there, that the more that you play the game, you start to realize that maybe defense and support and installing servers is a better strategy. But at first glance, it really just seems like attacking is the way to go. And it certainly worked for a lot of the players in the games that I've played with. Because really, first off, you get a tremendous amount of points right off the bat just by doing an attack, if you do it right at the right time, if there's enough server nodes to attack, and you can hit one player for a good amount of damage. And if you do direct damage, even better. Now, of course, and one of the things I like about this game is that you have to sacrifice cards in order to do that, and you only have so many cards per round. But nevertheless, it is pretty crippling to not only get a bunch of points just from attacking, but remember that you're covering up other players' nodes by making attacks, which is depriving them of points. Points for the nodes themselves, and points for having a pristine node at all. So it's really like a 1-2 whammy punch, and I have to play it more really to figure out whether or not it's... I mean, I've actually talked to the designer about this, and like I started off saying, some people find that server strategies are way overpowered, and it just seems to be different for every group. And I think that's, even though I could say I want to find out whether or not that's true or not, or whether there is some imbalances here, I think it's cool that there is that question, and that each group is different, and that I want to discover more and more about the game. And again, this is a small game, so I'm surprised they crammed that much strategy into it, or at least a question of which strategy is better. As far as any other complaints about the game, I mean, it's weird that it's overall, and I think I wasn't the only person in my group that thought this. There's a sense to the game that maybe it should be bigger than it is, or that it should be smaller than it is. It's at a weird stage in that it feels like right when you're getting going, the game ends, but at the same time, it's not necessarily a short game. It's at least a half hour long, so it's probably a bit heavier than a filler, but not as heavy as it should be to be like a mid-weight game. So it's sort of at an odd level there, and I wonder if there's just something that it's missing to really push it over the edge into greatness. I don't know, that's not really a focused complaint, it's just like a general feeling that I had. But still, overall, I like the theme, I like the artwork and design, I like the different card mechanics, I like the back and forth between the players, and the different routes to strategy that I still want to explore. I think this is a really solid game, and I think that Mole Ideas Game Design is a studio you should be looking out for, and I think it's criminal that Dungeon Guilds has not been brought over to the US or for anywhere else for a wider release, and I hope that League of Hackers doesn't suffer the same fate. I hope both games get a wider release because they are both solid titles.